Hello and welcome to another one of my podcasts. So this is podcast number 4. So I'm trying to do a weekly podcast for people who don't like watching content, or they don't have the time and they've only got the time to listen. For those of you that don't know me, I am a gold and silver coin dealer. I also run a stamp business. I'm also working very hard on YouTube, and I've got another thing that I've been working on that the YouTube community and also my Facebook group, or the Facebook group I helped set up, can benefit from. So in today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about debasement of currency. So in front of me, you can see the title, Silver Coins Junk for Collectors and Investors. I just got this out to prove a point, really. For those of you who don't own this book, it was written by a German gentleman called Sebastian Wachowski. If I've got his surname wrong, or I've pronounced his name wrong, I'm incredibly sorry. My German is nicht gut. Ich verstehe nicht. But I would love to go for a coffee with him. I would love to pick his brains. I don't particularly agree with everything he says. He is an academic, whereas I come from a trader angle. So I'm more a businessman. But I would love to sit down and get to know the inner workings of his mind. I think it would be a very fruitful experience for both of us. So he's got a lot of things in his book where he talks about values. I think they're completely wrong, personally. But I deal with it in a day-to-day basis in terms of buying and selling. He doesn't so much. That's not to have a go at him. I just have different views on the world than himself. But let's get into it. So let's talk about debasement. It's been shown time and time again throughout history that coins or currencies get debased. And from deducing from this book, I've gone through the major Western currencies and I've highlighted there or thereabouts. So some coins overlap, but I've highlighted how countries have either debased or rebased their currencies. I think it's very important because it shows it shows why you should have your money in metal. I believe it's called Greshams Principle, where good money drives out bad money. So, for example, in the States, you get people who coin roll hunt. They will take the silver. They'll keep the silver and put it to one side or sell it, and they'll use the other currencies. Now, this is why I believe you should put money into metal, because it's good money. It may not be a currency at the moment, but it is good money. I'm not advocating to say it will be a currency again. Maybe there will be a rebasement in currencies. I don't know. I've thought about it in my mind. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. Other people do believe that is the case. But let's see what is what in terms of different countries. So in Australia, from 1911 to 1944, they were 925 coins. So again, they are rough years because certain coins overlap each other. I just tried to get the overall picture. From 1947 to 1964, it then was debased to 500. Now in 1966, they tried to rebase the coinage, and they did at 800. So any of you who've seen my recent video on world junk coins, or constitutional, or I like to call them currency coins, they did that for 1 year. They couldn't afford to do it for more. So they just come off the standard. They just wouldn't have been able to do it. So Austria, 1909 to 1916, they had 835. From 1925 to 1926, it went down to 640. So they debased it. 1934 to 1936, they rebased it, and then they realised that they couldn't really keep it at that. From 1957 to 1973, they debased it back down to 640. Now, I'm not entirely sure why there is a gap in the year. Maybe they used old currency coins, or maybe the 1957 to 1973 is commemorative. I've tried to veer away from that, but I'm not an expert on all coins. There are hundreds of thousands of coins. It's very difficult. In Belgium, 1948 to 1954, 835. They didn't debase, not to a lower purity of silver anyway. In Canada, 1912 to 1919, they had a 925 coin similar to the British. 1920 to 1967, it dropped to 800. And 1920 to 1967, and 1967 to 1968 it then dropped to 500. They then came off the standard. Germany's an interesting one. So Germany's gone through different empires, republics, countries, whatever you want to call them. So in 1873 to 1919 they had 900 purity in the German Empire. Now the Weimar Republic, which everyone is very, very familiar with, from 1924 to 1933, they had 0.500, so 50%. The Third Reich, so the era from 1933 to 1945, tried to step it up, and they had a dual set of purity, so they had 906.25 in terms of purity. But then from 1951 to 1979, so the country Germany, it was 925. So they dropped the 900 purity. Finland's kind of a strange choice. I wasn't entirely sure why it was in the book in the major section. So from 1964 to 1965, it was at 900 purity, and it then dropped down to 500 purity from 1970 to 1985. Let's look at France. France is quite an interesting case, actually. 1898 to 1920, they had a purity of 835. From 1929 to 1939, it dropped down to 680. From 1960 to 1969, it was rebased. It went up to 835. And then they rebased it again from 1965 to 1986 to 900. I'm pretty sure they were currency coins. They're the big Hercules coins. They're really, really nice. I've had a couple a few years ago. Italy, 835, like Belgium. They didn't debase. Mexico was really hard to really pinpoint what was going on in terms of their coinage. They issue a lot of coins. They've got a lot of silver as a country, but I thought this country example was very interesting. 1920 to 1945, they had 720 purity. It dropped down to 500 purity from 1947 to 1949, and then to 300 purity from 1950. It was a standalone year. In 1957 to 1967, it then dropped down to 100, a tenth. That's madness, absolute madness. It might as well not have it. We're getting through there. We're more than halfway through the list. So the Netherlands, from 1921 to 1970, they had 720 coins, and from 1926 to 1945, 640. So they kind of had a duality. Sweden's a really interesting case as well. So they had duality in coins. 1910 to 1941, they had three types of purity, 800, 600 and 400, depending on the value of the coin itself. From 1942 to 1961, again, it was debased, but it then went to 400 and 300 in terms of purity. Switzerland maintained true. So they went from 1875 to 1967, it was 835 in terms of purity. South Africa went from 800 down to 500 and back up to 800 in terms of purity. That was done over a 60-year period. United Kingdom, as everyone knows, they went from 925 to 500. And last but not least, the USA, they went from 900 down to 400, although there was a time during the Second World War that they had the 350 purity war nickel. Now, all of these coins, they've all come off the silver standard. A lot of them have tried, a lot of them have failed to stabilize the currency and have debased it. Some of the countries have tried to rebase and failed. But this isn't just a failure of purity. You need to take a step back and realize the other ways that they have debased currency over the years. So you go back even further, they not only debased currency by changing the metal, they used to clip the currency. That was a form of debasement. So that's why they brought in reeded edges. So I'll give you an example. Edges used to be like this, and they started this. For those of you who are listening, it's just the reed changed. It used to have writing on the side. You then got debasement by paper money. That came after coinage. Coinage has been around for thousands of years. Paper money was then introduced. You can debase paper money by printing more of it. You can do that because it's a derivative in the sense that it will cost you a very small amount to print. For those of you, well, everyone knows the saying, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. That's due to excessive printing, and that's happened to many countries, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, etc. It gets even deeper though. Another form of debasement, credit cards, debt. It's another way that a country can debase a currency. They extend it. It's moving further and further away from a pure unit such as a gold or silver coin. And finally, the next trick they've come up with is quantitative easing. It's just debt by another form. Will they come up with other ways to make currency even less? Sure. Maybe cryptocurrency could be used. Now, there might be somebody saying, well, that's mad. Cryptocurrency's got inbuilt algorithms to prevent that. Sure, but how many cryptocurrencies are there? That's a form of debasement in itself. So yeah, it's just a thought-provoking episode today. The bet is, it's not whether you think gold will go up. The bet is, do you believe that human nature and history will repeat itself? It's something that's happened over thousands of years. It's not just in terms of silver purity. Well, it is in terms of silver purity. The Romans debased. I think the Egyptians debased. All major nations debased their currencies. It destroys the purchasing power of their money. And if you believe that humans can change, and that will no longer be a thing, and everything will be rebased, and it will go back to a sound money system, then you shouldn't be in gold or silver. And if you believe that humans will repeatedly make the same mistakes time and time again, you should be in gold and silver. That is the bet. Everyone knows my views on it. Everyone knows I'm long gold. Long gold more than I am silver, but everyone knows my views. So I hope you found it informative. I hope it's kind of made you think about how the world works slightly, and I hope you enjoyed my content. So take care. Bye.